Like the roll to be called.
Yes, ma'am.
Regent Herding, advisory member.
Here.
Regent Whitten, advisory member. Chair Stevens.
Here.
Vice Chair Martin.
Here.
Secretary Fletcher.
Present.
Regent Bogard.
Here.
I've lost my my roll call sheet. I'm sorry. I was using the screen.
Regent Green.
Regent Green.
Here.
Regent Jackson.
Present.
And Regent Rabinowitz.
Here.
All members are present. We have a quorum. We may proceed.
First item, please.
It is approval of the minutes from the April 27th System Policy and Planning Committee meeting.
Do you hear a motion or a consensus?
We need a motion and a second and then consensus.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right.
Second.
If there are no objections, the minutes are approved as is.
Thank you. Next item.
Okay, the next item is reviewing our itinerary and agenda for our June 15th and 16th board meeting. This will take place at West Kentucky Community and Technical College in Paducah. We do have reservations for everyone at the Holiday Inn in Paducah. We will start on Thursday, June 15th with an optional lunch at 11 a.m. at the Emerging Technology Center there on campus. Again, lunch is optional. We know that people will be traveling that morning. And then we will start official business at noon, again in the same Emerging Technology Center there on campus. We will adjourn by 5 p.m. that evening, and we will have a reception and dinner at the Country Club of Paducah. And then starting the next morning, we will have a breakfast and community breakfast there on campus. Again, we'll start our official business at 9 a.m. and we will wrap up by noon to allow for travel back home. And if we pull up the agenda here, we can look at the agenda items. Hopefully nothing has changed since our last meeting, but I know that Chair Stevens likes everyone to lay eyes on this once more before the meeting occurs, just in case there are any changes or additions.
Hannah,
So again,
excuse me, Hannah, I got a notice from you. We have somebody's gonna come and speak or supposed to. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We do have someone scheduled. It is, I believe, a staff member from JCTC, and she has requested to speak about the shooting incident that occurred and the crisis emergency preparedness. So unless I hear otherwise, she will be speaking during the open comment period. She'll have 3 minutes to speak, and she will have to be there in person.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We will then have a college presentation by Dr. Reese, and then we will move into our regular, of course, a chair's report with an update on the presidential search and where we are in that process. Acting President Ferguson will deliver his report, and we will address the Huron Project recommendations as our first agenda item, an action item at the meeting. So as you know, we will be discussing this at our June 5th and 6th retreat. And then we expect there to be specific recommendations coming from the retreat, which the board will take action on first thing at its June meeting. Then we'll move into learner success items, and those include an update on the online course quality assurance pilot. We'll have an update from Chancellor Williams. We will have ratification of the college's candidates for credentials, and we will recognize our two very own recent grads, Brittany and Richard, with a special action for them. That afternoon, we will go into executive session, and then we will adjourn. On Friday, again, starting at 8 a.m. with the breakfast, and then business will begin at 9 a.m. We will have employment, and Vice President Shook has a student lined up to speak about his experience with Handshake, which is our recent portal that we use to work with employers and match them with opportunities for work. So we will hear from that student, which should be a great addition to the meeting. And then we will move into organization success items. Again, we will have an update about the presidential search, anything specific that we need to discuss related to that. We will have an update on
Board Liaison Rivera, Regent Herding has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just real quick, is it 7:30 or 8 that we start the breakfast on Friday?
8, I believe. 8
Okay,
o'clock.
I think the other agenda, the smaller agenda said 7:30.
I think that's what time we asked for you to leave your hotel, check out of your hotel.
Oh, my fault. I'm sorry. I read it.
But I will double check that. Thank you for pointing that out. We will have an update from President Ferguson about emergency crisis planning and communications. Again, we will be hearing from an individual on that same topic the day before, but we know with the recent incident and kind of commonplace of these incidents these days, the board wants to know about what all of our colleges and the system office are doing to be prepared. Regent Jackson will be presenting the Board of Regents evaluation discussion as required by SACS COC. This is, you should have hopefully already taken your survey and filled it out, and Regent Jackson will be presenting that information along with any action items that may be associated with those results to the board. We will have an update from the audit committee meeting. Regent Herding will present that. And then we will have ratification of personnel actions. That's standard. That will be given by Parliamentarian Duncan. We we'll possibly have, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. We will have the financial report presented by Vice President Combs. We will possibly have some asset preservation construction projects. I wanted to list that on here. As of now, I'm not sure we have any, but just in case, it's kind of a placeholder in case any come up between now and then. As you've seen in our past meetings, we're having to approve a lot of these due to increasing construction costs and things like that. So as of now, again, we don't have any, but some may come up.
Hannah, we had a question. I think Wendy had a question.
Sure.
A question and a couple of comments. The question is for Regent Jackson. Have all board members participated in the survey thus far?
I checked it a couple days ago. We are still missing a few. I haven't checked it today, Wendy, but we were still missing a few.
Okay. And if I'm one of those, will you please send it to my notice? But I think I have completed it. The other thing is construction costs have now started to go down again, hoping that we don't see any increases in budgets. And if we do, we may need to ask for them to think about that and maybe resubmit. And then on the internal audit, you said, is that Regent Heerdink is going to be speaking to that?
Yes, and it's not just the internal audit, it's from the audit committee, which there was an internal audit and an external audit update, I believe, from that committee meeting. And I believe there was an update about the state audit as well that was provided at that meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was my questions. Thank you.
And back to Patsy. Patsy, yeah, I'm thinking is maybe that those members, if they could, if you have their names, you could send a reminder. I'm kind of like Wendy. I think I filled mine out, but I'm not sure. So if you just send those back to them and remind them, because we'd like to have 100%. Thank you.
I sure will. I kind of wanted to wait up closer to the meetings this week coming up, but I didn't want to harass anyone. But yeah, I definitely have their names, so I will send out friendly reminders. I like those myself.
Then we will act on several items that require action. We will have our 23-24 tuition, salary schedule, compensation, and annual budget, all of which, and our calendar for the next year, all of which require action by the board. And I believe Regent Green has her hand up.
I had a question about the salary schedule. Since we'll be voting on this, how will that coincide with the comp and class study timeline?
Great question. Pam, do you want to take that one?
Right. So the salary schedule really there will be two items: the cost of living increase for raises, essentially, and the salary schedule. The salary schedule has to be voted on every year. And so basically it may not change at all, the salary schedule. The raise might go into effect regardless of what you do as regents on the salary schedule. So those will be two separate items. So at the time that Huron comes out with the class and comp, then that will be in September. And at that time, either most likely at the December board meeting, if there are changes that need to be made in the salary schedule, which likely there will be, then it would most likely be at that time, or if you called a special called meeting, it would be before that. But that is how I would see the timeline going. Probably no change, and I'm not telling you how to vote right now, but probably no change right now, but then a change once those decisions and opportunities are identified in September through Huron.
And Pam, I know it's early in that process, but is there any indication that Huron will come back with more, how can I say this, more forward recommendations when it comes to comp and class than they have with this other part of the study?
So the fact of the matter is that it is very comprehensive, and I want to caution anyone who's out there listening to think that this is just about hey, I'm going to get a raise, or hey, I'm going to be reclassified, because it really is about creating a comprehensive compensation philosophy, policy, a playbook for compensation, which is essentially to guide how compensation is set going forward, and how it is, what criteria surround that compensation. But it also is about looking at all of the job classifications and positions and mapping out career pathways within families and subfamilies of jobs. So it is really a comprehensive overhaul of how we have been doing our compensation, our classification, and really our performance review will be looked at during this as well, and our ability to create career pathways and management trackways. So I feel very positive about the class and comp study, and it does look at faculty and staff in different ways. It looks at market analysis. So there is a lot going into it. And the HR directors, I'm going to give them a shout out right now, have been working endlessly and tirelessly on trying to really define those jobs, figure out where they fit in a family and a subfamily, and how to create those job or career pathways. So kudos to them for their hard work.
And I want to give them a second shout out, because I know that early on in the process, and even when we were discussing doing the comp and class study, that a lot of people had hesitation about that. They were concerned. And I think that one of the things that was most impressive to us as a committee with Huron was just the fact that they do look at this from the standpoint that this very well defines for people how they get a promotion or how they change, career streams or whatever. The other thing that I think this will really point out and will really help us to do is to make sure that we are fair and equitable across the system to everyone. So it doesn't matter geographically where you're living. If you're doing that job, you're doing that job. And under the larger umbrella of the system, I think there's a lot of fairness that's going to come into this process. So again, I really appreciate Regent Green and all the other HR folks who are out there doing the work, putting it in to make sure that everybody's lives are better going forward from this. So thank you very much.
And last but not least, on our agenda for our June meeting will be our officer elections. So we will be choosing a new board chair, vice chair, and secretary. And that will wrap us up for June.
Hannah, I would ask, I see Larry is on there. I received a letter from the college presidents about the tuition. And Larry, if you would not only send that out by email, but send a letter with mailing to each region so that everybody has an opportunity. And I would ask them if they have any questions and concerns, they reply to you or me, the one, about that letter that the college president sent out about an email to me about the tuition increase.
Chair Stevens, I can do that for you, but I need to wait till Buddy Combs gets back. He's been out of the office. Attachment A in that letter at Regent Fletcher had some questions about it. So I'm going to actually make sure that that is accurate as it should be. And so there may be a second version of the letter, not of the letter, but of attachment A. But as soon as I have that, I'll send it out to all of you.
Sure. And I like it by email as well as the U.S. Post Office so that everybody can look at it and understand it. If they have any questions, as Wendy did, they need to reply back before we vote on it. Okay?
I will also confirm with Buddy that there is a letter. I've not seen the final version of it coming from the chief business officers at all the colleges, also on the same subject in regards to tuition.
Thank you.
And I will echo a comment that all of you have heard me say before. I'm all about receiving the letter, and I appreciate the input of the presidents and the financial officers. But at some point, we have to quit saying tuition is the only way that we can fund what we're doing. And I would really appreciate if we can maybe encourage them to also come with some ideas on how we are going to cut or contain costs along the way. And I think that given the data from the Huron study recently, we should have lots of ideas about how to do that without having to add to tuition costs. The other thing is, as I was reading through some of that, and those of you who don't have the letter, I apologize, and I don't want to, spoiler alert, I will say I don't want to give it all away, but I will tell you that we're not really comparing apples to apples, and that's what I've asked Buddy to go back and take a look at. You know, we've used out-of-state tuition costs to factor in an average tuition credit hour or cost of attendance kind of calculation, and I'm hoping that they'll get all of those numbers aligned so that if we're comparing to our competitors, that we are using in-state for them and in-state for us, or out-of-state for them and out-of-state for us, and not using out-of-state for them and in-state for us, which of course makes that average look much bigger. There's one more comment there. Give me just a second. So I know that we have tuition credit hours, but in my opinion, if we are attaching a student fee to every credit hour, to me, that is increasing the cost of that credit hour. So if we have a student fee for only certain programs, I can see that not being listed as part of tuition, but I do still want everyone to pay very particular attention to the fact that the credit hour cost is one thing, but every single credit hour has an additional student service fee attached to it. To me, that's just another way of saying that tuition actually costs $7 per credit hour more, or whatever that number is. So when you get that report, please do delve into the numbers, take a look at that, see if you interpret that the way that I do. And I understand there's need for student fees in certain areas, but if every student pays every credit hour an additional $7, to me, we might as well call that tuition and be done with it. So just wanted to put that out there in the world. Thank you.
Joe, you had a question?
Yeah, real quick. Maybe this is for Pam Duncan. We did vote last time to change the election rules or policy. Do you foresee anything different, or could you go over maybe real quickly how that's going to take place since we did make some changes?
So we made changes to the election policy as well as the voting procedures. The election policy, basically, the big change was that we will not be calling each name. So for instance, if there are two people for vice chair or secretary at one of the offices, then we will not call each name all the way down and then all the way down. We will call on a regent, and the regent will indicate which of the two people that they would like to vote for. So that's the main change to that. We will take nominations from the floor. You can also provide a nomination in advance, but you have a limitation on basically what you can provide. There, in the past, people have provided big documents, et cetera, 20 pages, whatever, and there is a limit on what you can provide. On the voting, that just really clarifies what the quorum is, how you vote, and all of that. So there's no big change to the current policy, other than we will not be voting straight down.
And that was a request from the Regents to change that after last year's voting, which we had just recently changed. But it was a little uncomfortable for some to say no to a name. They would rather just choose the name they prefer. So we have honored that request.
And I will, prior to actually opening up the nominations, I will go over the policy and the procedures, how we will begin, with which office we will begin, how the nominations will come forward, all of that. So there will be a brief kind of primer on how it will work at that time.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? No hands up, no questions. Hannah, I guess it's back to you to ask one more time if there's any questions.
Any questions, or if not, we'll see you, I guess, next week, and then again in June 15th and 16th.
So we need a motion to adjourn and a second.
Hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
If we're all in consensus, you may raise your hand, either electronically or actually. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.